with the annual Lee Jackson event, which is at the Lee Chapel out at the Virginia Horse Center. Nobody in the city is going to see that. Mm-hmm. We felt that there needed to be people on the ground in the city waving flags at these light poles that the SCD was denied the use of. So we went to the Sons of Confederate Veterans General Executive Council and got the Sons of the SCV Heritage Defense Committee to sponsor a vigil in downtown Lexington, which just concluded. All the events were very well attended, but our efforts in downtown Lexington, both Friday and Saturday, we had about 40 flaggers at key points of the downtown standing at the empty light poles. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, they weren't empty. They had United States flags in them. That was a nice little insult there. Thank you, Miss Mayor. But we had about 40 people each day braving very cold weather to stand there carrying Confederate flags so that you could not go through downtown Lexington without seeing a Confederate flag.
And in years past, there had been just 2 days when the Confederate flag would be displayed from those flagpoles, correct?
Correct.
During what they call the Lee Jackson celebration.
So they were only 2 days out of 365 was the Confederate flags in the poles.
Yeah. Seems like that we need to increase the number of days that the Confederate flag is displayed now.
I think we've just created Lee Jackson Week now.
Yeah,
I think that we need to have a Lee Jackson Month. They have Black History Month. I don't see why we can't have Lee Jackson Month.
History Month.
That's correct.
April, so I would say all of April ought to have the Confederate flags from the flagpoles too.
Well, and that's something that we at the SLRC have been very good at, is even though we're not allowed to really get into political things, we certainly can advise our clients and advise everyday citizens what they can do in their individual capacities to help make these things work better and get into the face of tyrants and help the lawsuit by public activity in the streets.
What was the impression you took away from the events last weekend?
I have been to the Lee Jackson events in years past, and this one was much better attended. Mm-hmm. There was several hundred more people in the parade on Saturday than there has ever been. The police estimate was 1,500 for the parade. The Roanoke Times Marxist reporter reported there was only 300. Yeah. We were there. Sorry about that. We saw it.
It was glorious.
It was a wonderful parade.
Flags and happy people, and it was a really good day.
It was an excellent
cold,
event. Yeah.
Very cold.
And so there was good reporting about it. There was a lot of support. Those of us that were flagging on Main Street in Nelson and Washington just lost count of the number of people who honked, waved, stopped, rolled the window down to tell us that they were glad we were here. Mm-hmm. And there was all sorts of people flagging that downtown. I mean, it's they had mechanized cavalry. We had kids. We had people in uniform.
UDC.
We had the United Daughters of the Confederacy. We had Susan Hathaway, one of the best flaggers in the world from Richmond, Virginia. We had her friend Still Karen, cute little black girl who came all the way from Richmond to flag, and we had all our kids out there, and we had a good time. Yeah, it was a fun event.
I was just overwhelmed with the amount of support, the local support for this, and it's definitely something that the government of the city of Lexington has been hijacked by basically outsiders, people who were not born in Lexington but came from somewhere else, and they're not representing the will of the people of Lexington.
But I will say that there were about 8 to 9 businesses in downtown Lexington that displayed the flag, either inside their business, had boycott Lexington posters and bumper stickers in their business, flags flying from the building, flags flying inside the building. So there was quite a few people in downtown Lexington that were not happy with what the city council's done. For next year, it needs to be a bigger event. The Sons of Confederate Veterans and all Confederate groups need to get behind this. Folks, this is Mecca for us. Lee and Jackson lived in Lexington and are buried there. We cannot sit idly by while these outsiders claiming to be the city council insult our heroes. So next year, fortunately for most of us, the Lee Jackson weekend in Virginia is a week early than most of us outside of Virginia. Most people outside of Virginia. It's usually the weekend before Lee's actual birthday. So if you're an SCV camp or UDC chapter, consider holding your Lee Jackson event later and come to Lexington.
It should be a maximum effort.
Absolutely. We had the Commander-in-Chief and Lieutenant Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, but we need everyone. We need people from the Army of Tennessee, the Army of Trans-Mississippi to make an effort and come.
Yeah. We talked with the local people, and they welcomed the support that they were getting. It's a contentious issue, and there's a lot of people that are very upset with their city government about what's been going on.
And we can't lose this one. Whatever happens to the lawsuit, we've got to be there for Lexington, for Lee and Jackson. By the way, all of the poles have been named after a Confederate hero. And as far as we're concerned, those poles will bear that Confederate name in perpetuity. We need people to recognize that this is an important fight. We cannot afford to lose this fight. And the lawsuit is only one way in which we fight them. We need people on the ground. And I think you'll find a worthwhile effort to make a pilgrimage to Lexington next January.
Yeah, if you've never been, it's in a beautiful part of the Confederacy, the rolling hills of the western part of the state of Virginia. It's gorgeous, even when it's cold. And it's worth your while. If you haven't seen the shrine to Lee and the statue of Jackson, make your effort to go there.
I'll also say that the Stonewall Brigade Camp did an outstanding job in organizing the events and coordinating with the vigil. And I wanted to personally thank Commander Brandon Dorsey, who has been the man on the spot for years on this issue. He was screaming for help back in 2010, and nobody was listening. He was fighting alone. And finally, it became clear that they were going to insult Lee and Jackson, and people started to get interested. But Brandon's been fighting this by himself for quite some time. So I give a big pat on the back to Commander Dorsey.
The College of Washington and Lee have been making sniping at the events for years now, trying to limit expression of our memorials, with limiting flags and things like that. So it's occupied territory and needs to be taken back.
So on a personal note, we went there with our children, our teenage boys and younger children, and as Texans, we kept running into Texans there in Lexington. You throw a rock and you're going to hit a Texan in Lexington. So any of you Texans out there, consider coming to Lexington next year. You'll feel right at home.
That's exactly right.
So, and one of the best things you can do to help the Lexington fight is, and if you haven't already done so, is you need to join the Southern Legal Resource Center. Memberships are only $35 a year, but you cannot join a more potent, powerful, hard-hitting organization that takes the fight to the enemies of liberty and of the Confederate community than the Southern Legal Resource Center. We've been around since 1995. We're still here, hanging on by God's grace, and your support by joining our fight, by becoming a member, will make an important contribution to the fight in Lexington and to all the other fights going across our great Confederation.
So it's vital that you do that to the existence of liberty and the perpetuation of the fights that we have going on now. I want to thank you for listening to our broadcast today, and we'll be bringing you more updates on all things Confederate.